Hello all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page International. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. There's been a lot of change in world politics. The Philippine president announced his retirement, and some speculate it's to clear the way for his daughter, while Japan welcomed its 100th prime minister. Another bombshell has rocked the Roman Catholic Church. A major investigation reveals that French clergy sexually abused over 200,000 children in the past 70 years. As U.S.-China long-term conflict goes unresolved, a countdown has started to delist Chinese companies. Okay, let's get into it. Getting 2 shots doesn't mean fully vaccinated anymore for Israelis. On Sunday, Israel announced that only those who have received the 3rd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine are eligible for a green pass, and people who recovered from COVID-19 more than 6 months ago are now required to get at least 1 shot. It raises the bar for what the government considers full immunization. Since the government made boosters available in August, about 3.6 million people have received a 3rd dose. That's about 39% of the 9.2 million population. 63% of the population already has 2 shots, which means that about a quarter of the population who could enter restaurants, gyms, and many other venues may lose that privilege if they don't get another shot. Israel, as one of the most vaccinated societies, led the world with its rapid vaccine rollout. It was an early adopter of Pfizer booster shots, administering them to members of high-risk groups in July, and by the end of August to anyone above the age of 12. Other countries are watching closely. The number of COVID-19 patients hospitalized in serious condition has dropped in recent days, as the number of confirmed cases, which fell to 4,000 after topping 10,000 last month. The latest scandal to rock the Roman Catholic Church involved French clergy sexually abusing more than 200,000 children over the past 70 years, according to a major investigation released on Tuesday, October 5th. Jean-Marc Sauvé, head of the commission who compiled the report, said that the Catholic Church has turned a blind eye to the scourge for too long. Most of the victims were boys, he said, many of them between 10 and 13. Francois Deveau, a victim of church abuse and founder of Victims Association, The Liberated Word, told church representatives at the report's presentation, "You are a disgrace to our humanity. In this hell, there have been abominable mass crimes, but there have been even worse: betrayal of trust, betrayal of morale, betrayal of children." The head of the Bishops' Conference of France, Eric de Moulin-Beaufort, said the church was shamed, calling the report a bombshell. He asked for forgiveness and promised to act. The commission was established by the Catholic Church bishops in France at the end of 2018 to shed light on abuses and restore public confidence in the church at a time of dwindling attendance. It has worked independently from the church. Sauvé said the problem was still there. He added that until the 2000s, the church had shown complete indifference to victims, and that it only started to really change its attitude in 2015 to 2016. Pope Francis, who was elected in 2013, issued the most extensive revision to Catholic Church law in 4 decades this year, insisting that bishops take action against clerics who abuse minors and vulnerable adults. But critics accuse Francis of responding too slowly to the sex abuse scandals, of failing to empathize with the victims, and of blindly believing the word of his fellow clergy. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte said on Saturday that he will not be running for vice president in the 2022 election and will instead retire from politics. Duterte's move came as a surprise to many, as he just announced in August he would be running. Duterte said the overwhelming sentiment of the Filipino is that I'm not qualified, and it would be a violation of the Constitution. In obedience to the will of the people, I will follow what you wish, and today I announce my retirement from politics. In the Philippines, presidents are limited by the Constitution to a single 6-year term. Article 7, Section 4 of the 1987 Constitution states the president shall not be eligible for any re-election. No person who has succeeded as president and has served as such for more than 4 years shall be qualified for election to the same office at any time. Justice Secretary Bernardo Guevara denied the violation of the Constitution. He said, "There is nothing in the wording of the present Constitution that prohibits the sitting president from running for the position of vice president." However, speculation is that Duterte is not stepping down because of the Constitution, but maybe clearing the way for his daughter to succeed him. Polls suggest that Duterte, in tandem with his daughter Sarah, as the presidential candidate, would be a strong pairing, political analysts previously said. Sarah Duterte is currently the mayor of Davao City. After her father initially declared that he would seek the vice presidency, Sarah Duterte announced she would not run for president, saying she and her father had agreed that only one Duterte would run for a national office next year. This allows Sarah Duterte to run, said Antonio Lavina, a professor of law and politics. She sees through the father's scheme, or is it a drama to confuse everyone? Rodrigo Duterte, the 76-year-old leader, is known for his deadly anti-drug crackdown, brash rhetoric, and unorthodox political style. In June, the International Criminal Court's outgoing chief prosecutor said that a preliminary examination found reason to believe crimes against humanity had been committed during Duterte's anti-drug crackdown. Carlos Conte, who is Philippines researcher for New York-based Human Rights Watch, said, "I would take his announcement with a lot of salt." He added, "But assuming that he's really going to retire, that doesn't mean he won't get the protection from the ICC that he craves." On October 4th, Japan's new Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, and his cabinet were sworn in. Kishida officially became the 100th Prime Minister of Japan. The 64-year-old Kishida won the presidential election of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party last week and was confirmed as Prime Minister, Yoshihide Suga's successor. He will face a series of domestic and foreign challenges after taking office, such as fighting the Delta variant of COVID, an economic recovery, and the growing security threats posed by the CCP and North Korea. At the same time, he will also try to help the government regain more public support, since the insistence on holding the Tokyo Olympics during the epidemic led to public discontent. Kishida, a former foreign minister, can rally consensus from all sides. He also has experience working with the White House during the President Obama's time. Kishida arranged for the first visit of a sitting U.S. president to Hiroshima, a city that suffered a devastating blow in World War II. Kishida supports stronger security cooperation with the United States, as well as cooperation with other allies, such as the Quadruple Alliance, the Quad, which Japan formed with India, the United States, and Australia to counter the CCP and nuclear-armed North Korea. He pledged to beef up Japan's missile and naval defense capabilities. He acknowledged the importance of continuing dialogue with the CCP, an important neighbor and trade partner, but he said, "We must speak up against the CCP's attempt to change the status quo in the East and South China Sea." Kishida's cabinet has created a new post, Minister of Economic Security, with former Vice Defense Minister Takayuki Kobayashi taking up the post. He will be responsible for developing a series of policies to safeguard Japan's sensitive technologies and respond to changes in the international order, such as the U.S.-China confrontation. This is a new position aimed at dealing with growing security threats posed by the CCP. During his election campaign, Kishida expressed concern about Taiwan affairs, saying that Taiwan is at the forefront of the U.S.-China confrontation. He also said that Japan and the United States need to decide how to respond in a crisis involving Taiwan, and that they should go further than the previous administration. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen congratulated Kishida and his cabinet on October 4th on Twitter. She said she hoped to work with Kishida to deepen friendly relations with Taiwan and Japan and strengthen ties as a democratic country. Taiwan indeed needs Japan and other allies' help because over the weekend, cross-strait relations in Taiwan intensified. But before we continue, please subscribe to Front Page International if you haven't already. Please help us to spread the word about this new channel by liking and sharing this video. And if you want to help Front Page, please consider supporting us by donating to our donor box. The link is in the description. We here at Front Page thank you for your support. Okay, let's get back into it. On October 2nd, the CCP sent 39 fighter jets into Taiwan's air defense identification zone just one day after the communist regime deployed 38 fighter jets over the island nation. On October 1st, China commemorated the CCP's takeover of the mainland in 1949. It is a tradition for the CCP to display military force on this day, and this year was the largest display causing concern for Taiwan. The CCP claims Taiwan as its territory. However, Taiwan has self-governed since 1949. The CCP has never governed Taiwan. The self-ruled island sharply criticized the CCP on October 2nd and complained about the year or more of repeated missions by the CCP Air Force. Taiwan's Premier Su Seng-chang said China has been wantonly engaged in military aggression, damaging regional peace. Defense Minister Choi Koo-cheng warned on October 6 that the CCP will be fully capable of mounting a full-scale invasion of Taiwan by 2025. According to the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense, air patrol units were deployed and air defense systems were set up to track Chinese aircraft in response to the incursion. Chinese dissident Professor Wan Hongbing pointed out that the reason the CCP wants to invade Taiwan is simple. It's because of the enormous effect that the Taiwan's democracy and freedom have had on the hearts of the Chinese people. It has become the most deadly political threat to the CCP. A statement from the U.S. State Department warned that China's military activity near Taiwan risks miscalculation and undermines regional peace and stability. We urge Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure and coercion against Taiwan, said the statement. It added that the United States, as Taiwan's biggest supplier of arms, would continue to help the government maintain a sufficient self-defense capability. U.S. Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks told the Center for Strategic and International Studies on October 1st that the potential threat of a CCP invasion of Taiwan is an issue the U.S. military is watching closely. Taiwan produces a large number of microchips needed by the U.S. defense and commercial industries. Taiwan has been getting more support from the democratic world. This year, both the G7 and NATO took a tougher stance against the CCP on Taiwan and other issues. The Quad is also emerging as a strong organization with the newly formed AUKUS Trilateral Security Alliance among the US, Britain, and Australia. The world's leading nations are working together in a concerted effort to confront the CCP. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, has decided to hold Chinese companies to American standard auditing practices. If Chinese companies continue to flout these regulations, they will be forced or they will be delisted from American stock exchanges. The delisting will speed up the separation of Chinese enterprises from their American investors who own securities in the 200-odd companies about to be delisted. In December of 2020, President Trump signed the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, the HFCAA, which allows U.S. exchanges to delist foreign companies that do not comply with U.S. auditing standards for 3 consecutive years. The act followed nearly a decade of failed attempts by U.S. and CCP regulators to address the issues of audit examinations. The U.S. Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, the PCAOB, adopted a new framework this September that will help the board hold foreign companies accountable. The board inspects more than 200 non-U.S. audit firms in more than 40 jurisdictions every 3 years, but has not been able to inspect audit firms in China or Hong Kong. The board cannot review audit transcripts from China without the approval of CCP authorities. The SEC is working out the details of how the HFCAA will be implemented and is finalizing its rules. SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said the countdown began this year. Gensler stressed, whether in California, the Cayman Islands, or China, all companies that seek to raise money in deep and liquid U.S. capital markets should play by American rules. The SEC expects the U.S. regulators would flag Chinese companies in 2022 if they don't get audits covering the company's finances from 2021. To reduce risk, some investors have swapped their American depository receipts, their ADRs, in Chinese companies for shares traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Wisdom Tree Investments, a New York-based firm, swapped Alibaba Group's ADRs for the e-commerce giant's Hong Kong-listed shares late in 2020. Wisdom Tree Investments is closely monitoring trading volume in Hong Kong to determine whether it should switch ADRs of other companies. U.S. regulators said they have never been given the transparency they need to review audits of Chinese companies. Over the years, the CCP often didn't turn over the documents they needed and didn't engage in good faith negotiations. U.S. officials complained that the CCP was using national security as a ruse not to disclose company books. U.S. and CCP officials have tried to restart audit talks in recent years but failed to agree on key issues. One sticking point is how the CCP restricts U.S. regulators' access to information deemed essential. When the Oversight Board tried to inspect an audit of a Chinese company in 2017, the CCP failed to provide U.S. required working papers and redacted other documents. In the absence of a resolution, the HFCAA was introduced in March of 2019 and was passed in the House and Senate in 2020 and then signed by President Trump. In April of 2020, U.S. securities regulators proposed a joint inspection framework. Under the framework, U.S. officials could conduct inspections and investigations in China in the presence of CCP officials and obtain audit documents deemed relevant by the CCP. In 2020, the Chinese company Rui-Ching Coffee, the Starbucks of China, admitted to fabricating revenue and expenses. On June 29, 2020, it was officially suspended from trading on the NASDAQ and entered the delisting process. The SEC accused Rui-Ching of defrauding investors by grossly misrepresenting the company's revenue, expenses, and net operating losses. In December of 2020, Rui-Ching agreed to pay the SEC $180 million. After being rescued and reintroduced to the wild over a decade ago, a once orphaned elephant returned to pay a visit to her former keeper. Best of all, she brought her own baby to meet him. The elephant named Sunye was discovered alone in the African wilds almost 20 years ago after she was separated from her mother as a newborn calf. At the Shendrick Wildlife Trust in Kenya, she bonded with Benjamin, her primary keeper, the man responsible for resident elephants' round-the-clock primary care, health, and happiness. In the Athumba unit, Sunye learned the skills she needed to fend for herself, eventually leaving of her own accord in 2009. Rob Branford, the Trust's executive director, said, "While it might have been more than a decade since Sunye chose to return to the wild, it seems she never forgot the kindness that was shown to her." On September 1st, Sunye showed up to visit Benjamin. Sunye, now fully grown, nuzzled and snacked from her rescuer's hands as Benjamin sat patiently beside his old friend. Sunye's baby stayed close to its mother as the pair caught up. Since Sunye and Benjamin's reunion, the mama elephant has returned several times with her baby. All interactions are on her terms, making her ongoing bond with the man who raised her even more meaningful. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for watching our new show, Front Page International. Please help us to spread the word by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page International, and we will see you next time.